Kuldip, I'd like to turn to you now. I know many of us who have seen the news of the last several days are very excited to learn more about the state of ALS research. And of course, I'm referencing the recent announcement about AMX 35. So could you give us an overview of the ALS research program?
Sure. Can you hear me, Josh?
You bet.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's so amazing to follow Gail. She's just so positive and courageous in sharing her story. Just so inspiring. Hi everyone. I'm joining you from New Jersey. Hope you don't hold that against me. Let me share my screen with you. And Josh, let me know if you see the screen.
We see your slides.
My slides. Okay, perfect. So, so what I'll do today is just very quickly is go through who we are, what we do, give you a quick update on the state of the field, and then talk about this really new exciting finding that Josh mentioned. So who we are, I think, you all know us well. We are the largest philanthropic funder of ALS research in the world. We're not the largest. NIH funds about 4 times than we do. Just to give you some idea of our scope, since the Ice Bucket Challenge, we have committed $110 million into research. Currently, we have about 170 active projects. That's $54 million of commitment in research. And this spans across 15 different countries. We fund research, we fund infrastructure grants, we fund training and education, we fund fellowships. I'll go into, in the next couple of slides, what our funding entails. What makes us different is this mission integration piece. We're not just a research organization. We are a research organization, we are a care services organization, and we are an advocacy organization. And the decisions we make in research are taken in integration, strategic integration with these other mission areas. And I think what's also important to understand is that we're never going to be able to fund everything. We are a $21 million organization. That's what we funded in terms of research last year. Our goal is to leverage. And in fact, we have shown that $40 million of our funding resulted in $120 million of follow-on funding. So really our job is to leverage in that 3 times of funding that our funding is able to have an effect downstream. So this is our ecosystem. I'm on slide 3. Hopefully you all can see it. And really, if you start from all the way on the left side, this is what normally happens. You have to understand the biology and genetics of ALS. This is where you find out what is different in ALS versus people that don't have ALS. And those biological targets that are different then become targets for drug development. And so you move from the biology piece, which is really the most important piece, to the right, to the green stage where it says drug and biomarkers development. So this is what happens mostly. The biology piece happens in academic labs. The green portion of the drug development piece happens in drug companies. And drug companies will develop drugs, will test it preclinically, and see if it is safe to take it into humans. So that's when you enter into the blue stage, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. That's what happens in the clinic. That's where you start testing the drugs in ALS patients. And so in phase 1, you test for safety. In phase 2, you test for safety and efficacy, whether it works. And in phase 3, you test for, again, safety and efficacy in a larger population. And then there's also research that happens on the other side, which is we have research in assistive technology, where we want to make sure that we can fund research to maybe develop new wheelchairs or maybe develop new devices. We fund research into telemedicine or telehealth research. We fund research to understand the burden that caregivers and families, Gail talked about this, and we fund research into access and quality of care, natural history studies. We fund research into surveying ALS patients and caregivers so that we understand the challenges they face. And underneath of all this is public health science approaches, prevention approaches, and as I said, approaches for infrastructure, for data collection, for tool development, for training of clinical fellows and preclinical fellows. And if you are wondering what out of this ALS Association funds, this is what ALS Association funds. It's our research program is multifaceted, solutions-based, and has a fairly wide footprint. As you can see, there's really not a lot that we do not fund. We fund biology, we fund drug development, we funded phase 1 and phase 2 studies. You may have heard about the platform trial, we funded that. We fund a lot of the assistive technology. Everything that you see in red here is what we fund. The only thing that we really do not fund is phase 3 studies, which almost every other nonprofit in the world does not fund phase 3 studies because they're just so big that they're something that really only pharma can afford to fund and take forward. So what does the clinical trial landscape look like? And this is from May 2020, so it may have changed a little bit, but this is just to tell you that the clinical trial landscape is really good right now. We have over 60 trials that are enrolling. They're either in phase 1, as I told you earlier. Phase 1 is when the first time they're tested for safety, or in phase 2, where they're being tested for safety and efficacy, or phase 3, which is where we are testing again for safety and efficacy in a larger population. And what you can see here, I don't expect you to know all these names. What I want you to get an appreciation of is that there is a whole slew of drugs here that are targeting different targets. They're going after different pathways. Some are inflammation, some are antioxidant pathways, some are mitochondrial drugs, some are genetic therapies. These are different type of approaches. Some are small molecules, some are antisense technologies, some are stem cells. So the point is that we have an extremely diversified portfolio right now in terms of what we are testing. And of course, we hope that all of these are positive. I'll talk about the one in green, Centaur Trial, a little bit later that Josh mentioned. But again, I just want you to take home messages. It's an exciting landscape. It's full of diverse approaches, and that's what's going to take for us to go after this complex disease. We don't know what will work, and so the more shots on goal we have, the better it is for us. So here's the state of the field. The state of the field is good. As I said, again, I'm repeating myself, but I want you to take that as a take-home message. If you start from the top in blue, we got robust efforts in understanding ALS. This is what I was telling you earlier about biology. We need to, by doing genetic sequencing, by doing omics approach, by looking at epidemiological studies, we are understanding the basic mechanisms that go awry, that go dysfunctional in ALS, because that's where the new targets are going to come from. If you then move to your left to diverse biological targets, I just showed you that we have therapies that are targeting C9 or 72, SOD1, stem cells, Tregs, urate, tyrosine kinase, you name it. Multiple drug approaches, if you go one step down, as I told you, we have antibody approaches, we have viral vectors, we have small molecules, we have stem cells, antisense approaches, just a slew of different approaches to test out. If you go one down to the blue in institutional engagement, we have engagement from industry. That's what we're going to need. From the last count, I've heard there are over 100 different companies that have either a preclinical or a clinical program in ALS. We need that. We need their buy-in. We need their investment in this disease, even if it is a rare disease. Clinical trial efficiency, going to the yellow part, that is important. And you've all heard about the platform trial. The platform trial is increasing efficiency in how quickly we can test these targets and therapies in the clinic. Community engagement, we have the community engaged. You're joining us today. The patients are engaged, the caregivers are engaged. You all want to be involved, you all want to be informed, and that's important. And so the state of the field is robust, it's good, and we need it to stay this way. So you may be wondering, how do we select projects? I told you earlier, we have 170 active projects. We have funded $110 million since the Ice Bucket Challenge. How do our research projects get selected? So I just want to walk you through this real quick. We have a very deliberate, rigorous, and transparent process by which each and every one of our projects gets selected. The very first thing that happens on the top in blue is a letter of intent. The very first thing someone will do, we'll ask them to send in a short proposal. It's literally your elevator pitch, 1 to 2 page document. Tell us your idea. And at this stage, we're really looking at, does it meet our priorities? How novel the idea is? Does it fit the scope of our funding program? I can tell you most of the time, the answer is yes. And we ask them to submit a full proposal. So now you're in the yellow stage, and a full proposal is, let's submit your 8 to 12 page idea into a full proposal. And at this stage, we peer review it. We get subject matter experts, SMEs, externally, who are not conflicted with that idea to come in and review that. They review it in many different criteria: scientific planning, team, they look at the budget, they look at the feasibility, the timelines, our overall experimental objectives, material and methods. They look at all of that, and this review committee of subject matter experts will then provide recommendations. These recommendations, then I will take those recommendations to our research committee. Our research committee is the committee of our board of trustees, which is comprised of volunteers like Mark Colness that you'll hear from next. And it's comprised of patients, of caregivers, former caregivers, scientists, clinicians, business professionals. And it's the research committee that provides the final approval for funding and budget. Without their approval, not a single project gets approved. And so all of the 170 projects that you saw earlier were approved by our research committee. And as you can see, this is a really rigorous process. And if you survive through this process, and by the way, perhaps maybe 10 to 20% survives, it's a very competitive process. It's very competitive to get funded. And if you do get funded, you get in that green part, the grant project stage. And we make sure that we don't give you the full funding right up front. We do milestone-based payments. We make sure the scientists are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I check that work and I release the next payment. We of course encourage collaboration, data sharing, specimen sharing. We encourage that they publish the results so that the entire community can learn from it. So just, you may be wondering just I'll go through sort of what we funded at a higher level and then what we funded in your St. Louis area. So despite the impact of COVID, and I can tell you COVID has had a really, has really impacted and limited our ability to fund research. It's just been a difficult time. But we have been committed to fund research, and
Okay.
despite that, since January of this year, we have committed $13 million to over 44 different projects. And I talked about the $3 million to Healy platform trial. This is the trial that MGH and the Healy Center are doing, where they're testing 5 drugs all at the same time. And this is really an innovative idea. So that, think about playing a football game. You have to make a stadium, you play a game, then you put the stadium down, then you put the stadium back up again, and then you play a second game. Wouldn't it make sense if you build a big enough stadium that 3 or 4 games are being played at the same time? And that's exactly what the Healy trial is doing, so that you don't have to take down the trial and bring it back up again. You use the efficiency and infrastructure built into the platform trial to test multiple therapies, and thereby you save on time and you save on money. And so I'm not going to go into all of these, but just wanted to give you a flavor of the type of projects that we're funding in your area. And you can see here, out of the 170, there are 7 or 8 projects here that are in your area that we're funding. Tim Miller is leading this effort in TDP-43 PET Tracer Challenge. What is that? What is a PET tracer? A PET tracer is a biomarker, so that we can, in an ideal world, take an ALS patient, have them undergo a PET scan, and see where the pathology is. If we can find a PET tracer for ALS, that will just change the way we do drug discovery and clinical trial management. And so what Tim Miller is doing is extremely crucial and valuable. And that's happening on the ground in your area. So coming to what Josh alluded to at the very beginning, and this is what I want to end with in the last 4 minutes, 5 minutes. You may all have heard about the Centaur Trial. This is something that we funded back in 2016. Centaur was testing this compound called AMX35. It's a combination product of 2 products. And these 2 products go after 2 different pathways, a mitochondrial pathway and a protein handling pathway. Both of these pathways have been implicated in ALS. And what this trial showed was, one, it was a robust and well-designed trial. It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled, multi-center. It was across 25 different sites in the United States. And again, an amazing, well-designed trial. 137, I think, patients took part. 88, 89 in the drug group, 35 to 37 in the placebo group. And what is really exciting is that it demonstrated a significant slowing of disease progression of ALS disease as measured by the ALS-FRS score. Again, it was an estimated 2.3 point difference over 6 months. And if you looked at it in a different way from change from baseline, it was a 2.9 point difference. And, this may seem like a small difference over 6 months, but, it's a heterogeneous disease. Every patient is different. A 2 to 3 point difference in a trial like this could mean a difference of being able to eat for some patients versus having a feeding tube, or being able to walk with some assistance versus being in a wheelchair. So, what's really exciting about this is that this effect was on top of the standard of care. 80% of people were already taking riluzole and Radicava, and this drug still had its effect on top of that. Even the secondary endpoints like muscle control, respiration, hospitalizations, although they were not significant, they were also in the same direction. as the ALS-FRS score. On top of all of this, AMX35 demonstrated an extremely good safety profile. It was generally well tolerated. There were some adverse events related to gastrointestinal effects, but these are transient. These were short-lived. They went away. And so we think this is a extremely beneficial risk-benefit ratio for this drug. And what would normally happen is down here in gray. So what would normally happen is that Amylyx at this stage, at a positive phase 2 trial, would meet with the FDA. The FDA would require a phase 3 trial. Amylyx would then undergo a phase 3 trial. They would undertake a phase 3 trial, which means that they would have to recruit patients, get all the sites selected, more patients, more sites. They would have to do longer observation period than 6 months. And this alone would take at least 3 to 4 years. I mean, phase 2 started in 2016, and we're seeing the results now. Think about how long the phase 3 would take. And then if it was positive in that case, Amylyx would need to submit a new drug application to the FDA. FDA would review it. By the way, this new drug application is millions of pages. And then the FDA would review it and hopefully approve it. And this would take 4 to 5 years for the drug to come to the market. And we at the ALS Association have reviewed the data, spoken to our experts and our board, and we have seen the good benefit risk ratio that the drug provides. And we think that the ALS community can't wait. That we are asking that the FDA and the Amylyx work with the community to make it available to everyone with ALS as soon as possible. So we're asking that we need pathway 1, which is here in red, that the Amylyx meets with the FDA, they submit their NDA now, that the FDA accept that NDA, and that we understand that this is only a phase 2 trial. So FDA can ask Amylyx to do a study post-approval, but that they review this NDA and approve it right away. And so if you agree with us, we ask that you go and sign this petition that you see down here, als.org/petition. There's 39,379 people who have already signed the petition. Wouldn't it be great if we can get it to 40K after this town hall? But we want to get as many signatures before we can submit this to the FDA and to Amylyx. We're asking both to take this unconventional route because the ALS community can't wait. So with that, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today, and I'll be happy to take questions later.